Thank you for your patience and welcome to Eluna's 2020 Community Conversations, What It's Like Growing Up with Addiction at Home. I'm Mary Fitzgerald, the CEO. On behalf of all of us at Eluna, we are so grateful you've made the time to join us today. This is our 20th year of serving children and families impacted by grief and addiction. We offer free weekend camps in 48 locations across the US and Canada, and have served over 40,000 campers through our Camp Mariposa and Camp Erin programs. Through our Eluna Resource Center, which offers confidential, personalized support, we have served over 200,000 visitors since 2016, but we know we have much more to do. I'd like to thank all of our team for their dedicated work in launching this community conversation series, and to all of our sponsors for making it possible. Thank you to our presenting sponsor, AmerisourceBergen, to New York Life, Dwayne Morris, Charles and Deborah O'Donnell, ASD Answering Service for Directors, Alchemies, Bender Construction, the Walter Williams Foundation, M&T Bank, Diversified Search, Penn Medicine, and Dr. Gary Dorsheimer. And now it is my pleasure to introduce you to an award-winning journalist whose passionate and dogged reporting focusing on children, education, and poverty, has helped the last, the least, and the littlest. Her thoughtful work, including her coverage of our Camp Mariposa program, for which we're ever grateful for, has been seen, heard, and read by millions on outlets including NPR, BBC, PBS, The Washington Post, and The Atlantic. We are truly honored to have her with us today. Please welcome Kavitha Cardoza.
Thank you so much, Mary. The American Medical Association has warned that more than 40 states have reported increases in opioid-related mortality just in the last 2 months. And so as this topic is as relevant as ever and critically important, and I'm delighted to be here. I visited a camp in Dayton, Ohio for children between 9 and 17, and I saw Eluna's addiction prevention and mentoring program for myself. I spoke with several children about their experiences and received one of the best compliments I've ever got. One 12-year-old said at the end of camp, "Kavitha wasn't like a reporter at all." We know that without support programs, children who live in families with substance abuse issues are more likely to experience depression, homelessness, poverty, and suicide. Through the support of Camp Mariposa in 2019, 98% of participants had no involvement in the juvenile justice system, and 95% of participants did not use any substances to get high. Let's listen to someone who's experienced the program up close as a camper. Here's Kaya's video.
She just told us about that. She found this cool camp, and she know that we want to. My name is Kia Jackson, and I'm 12 years old. I've been at Camp Mariposa in New Orleans for 4 years. I came to Camp Mariposa because when I was with my auntie one day, she just told us about that. She found this cool camp, and she knew that we want to get out and do things. And then that's when she signed us up. And Miss Shayna had came and told us all about Camp Mariposa. She told us that it's a good camp for us and stuff. And at first, I was like, I hope it is, because not all camps is good. And when I came, I was like, I'm so glad that my auntie found this camp for us. The thing that I love about Camp Mariposa is if they don't have no bullying going on at Camp Mariposa, and if you have a problem, you don't have to be scared to tell it to someone, and people at Camp Mariposa is always helpful too. The thing that I learned about dealing with family members is no matter what your family members do, even if they take drugs, it's not your fault. The most important thing that adults can do to understand me is they just have to really just talk to me, and once they talk to me, I'm just gonna start expressing my feelings and stuff. One thing that I feel like more people should know about me is that I love to dance and I love to sing, and I'm not afraid to tell the truth. And I recommend you to come to Camp Mariposa. Thank you, and I can't wait to get back at Camp Mariposa, the best camp ever.
I can absolutely vouch for that. I'm so happy today to be joined by 3 panelists, all with very different perspectives. Paige is a student who's taken time out of her Zoom class in school to speak to us. Her stepfather had substance abuse issues and was abusive. She's a longtime camper in Florida who graduated from the program and then became a junior counselor herself. Hi, Paige. Thank you so much for being here. Crystal Burch is a parent who's going to talk about her experience with Camp Mariposa as a parent. Her mother and stepfather were addicted to drugs and alcohol, and Crystal says she watched as the cycle repeated itself with her brother and his family. After his 2 children were taken away by the state, she adopted them. Thank you for being here, Crystal. Lovely to see you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
When reporting on my story, or really any addiction story I've done, there's a phrase I heard again and again to describe the dysfunctional family rules that these children often have to live by. Don't talk, don't trust, don't feel. That phrase was coined by our next panelist, Claudia Black. She's the architect of the Claudia Black Young Adult Center at the Meadows. She's also an author, a PhD, and trainer, and her research on children impacted by substance abuse led to the creation of Camp Mariposa. Welcome, Dr. Black. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. It's truly my honor.
We have some time for questions at the end, so please go ahead and send them our way. Paige, I'm going to start with you. Your stepfather is not part of your family anymore, but you've said even now when you're having dinner or you're chatting with your family, you suddenly feel that person is in jail, but you still feel their influences with you. How did living with someone who had substance abuse issues affect you? Sorry, Paige, I can't hear you very well. I can't hear you. You know, I'm going to go on to Claudia, and then we will come back to you once we've resolved those technical difficulties. Claudia, one of the things many campers, since, you know, they've been very young, have not always found it easy to talk or to open up. There's a lot of shame and a lot of stigma. What are some of the roles children take on in a family impacted by addiction? What are some of the unspoken rules they have to live by?
They learn at a very young age how not to talk honestly about what it is that's happening. They learn how not to show their feelings. They learn that they can't trust other people. The most important people in their lives are not available to them. Then it doesn't make sense that they could trust other people. They learn it's not okay to make a mistake. And they oftentimes learn it's simply not okay to be a child. You know, somehow they get punished for just who they are in their young age. They learn not to think about what's happening. They learn not to question what's happening in that process. And in that, they learn what we call a high tolerance for inappropriate behavior.
Some of them also take on parental roles.
A lot of them will take on parental roles. They're often called hero children, little responsible children, because the adults aren't taking responsibility. So they become the parent to the parent, they become the parent to their siblings, and they raise themselves. You know, I think that what we recognize at Camp Mariposa is how much they let go of their childhood. And what that means is also developmentally what they don't get to learn.
Paige, I'm going to try you again. I am hoping that your audio is sorted out. What did you mean by when you said their influence is still with you? I think we're still having some problems. So I'm going to go ahead to you, Crystal. How did you come to be connected with Camp Mariposa?
I became connected with Camp Mariposa. Like you said, I had adopted my niece and nephew, and I went out to dinner one night with my significant other, and when I came back, my oldest, my son, had told Papa, he said, "Papa, you know, I'm adopted." And he said, "Yeah, I know." And he said, "You know, I'm adopted because my mom and dad didn't love me." And that broke my heart. And so I decided to be open with them about what was going on. And I was lost and I didn't know what to do. And I seen this commercial on TV one day, and it was for the Camp Mariposa. And so I researched it and I called, and I had to wait a year because Hunter was only 8 at the time. And as soon as he was 9, he started going to camp. And on Saturday, he turns 13, and he's been going to camp ever since he was 9. And we've loved it. And now his sister, she's 10, and she's been going since she was 9 as well.
You know, clearly this is like such an emotional issue for you, Crystal, having to to answer questions and to deal with it. Claudia, I wanted to ask you, how should parents answer some of these questions? Or, you know, kids say the darndest things.
Unfortunately, in so many of these kids' situations, it's not their parents who are going to answer. It's oftentimes somebody outside of that family situation who's going to really be able to respond more appropriately. And I say that because the parents may be active in their addiction. They may be active in the chaos of what we call the codependency, depressed, etc. And what I think is really important is that children can understand this disease concept. They understand the concept of somebody being hooked to something, being trapped by something. And as you're going to hear little kids from Camp Mariposa talk, one of the most important things they get out of it is they are not responsible for the trauma that's going on in the home. They're not responsible for it. They can't control it. They can't cure it. And the most important thing they can do is learn how to take care of themselves. And they learn how to take care of themselves when we, that other person, help them make healthy choices in the context of their day, such as when mom and dad are screaming at each other, where can you go that feels more safe, versus to stand there frozen and to witness that kind of trauma. When you come home from school and the doors are locked, where can you go that would be safe, that somebody would help keep you safe? So we can help them with problem solving, because they're problem solving in a vacuum. And we can help by validating their feelings. One of the things we know is that the most important protective factor for kids who are in troubled families is a single adult that spends time with them, that in whatever it is they're doing, be they out gardening together, taking a walk together, doing Legos, that somehow that time implants a message that says, you know, I like you. You're a cool kid. And for this moment, this child is not in fear. And for this moment, this child is experiencing that relationship that says, I'm really okay. I think somebody also said, and I think it was you, Kavitha, these kids experience so much fear chronically and so much shame, and giving them the opportunity to be listened to, validated, and as I said, experienced in a way that people can appreciate them and acknowledge them, that child will internalize a different belief about themselves.
Crystal, what were some of the changes you saw in your 2 kids after camp?
I would have to say kind of like what Claudia was saying, and also that they felt like they could be open and not so much shame, and like I had said, at first Hunter felt like he was unloved, and that was the reason, like for some reason it was their fault. And to this day they've taken that away very deeply from camp, that it is not their fault, and that they are loved, and that they are not alone, and that there's people out there, there's resources out there, there's ways to break that family cycle without turning to drugs or alcohol.
Mm-hmm. And you've also,
and what Crystal was,
go ahead, Claudia.
What Crystal just described was breaking the don't trust rule, that they understand that there's people there for them. So that's what Camp Mariposa does. And that's what certain individuals can do, is to help them break the don't talk, don't feel, don't trust rules.
Yes.
Crystal, you've also said that Camp Mariposa didn't just help your children, it also helped you. How?
Yes. Because first of all, once a year at camp, they have a get together with all the parents, and rather it be biological parents or foster parents or aunts or uncles, whatever it is. And we all get together and we all open up and we share our stories, and, and that gives the parents time to connect and come together. And, sometimes we carpool to camp together. And then, also throughout the year, if there's not COVID, we have really awesome camp experiences, like going to baseball games and going to the zoo together, so that there's a connection, not just with the children, but within the parents, and within the the counselors and the people who facilitate the camp. And I've called them many times in tears, like, my brother's back in jail, I don't know what to tell the kids. And they've always been very supportive of, if anything.
Right. So it's that building community.
Yes, that you're not alone. Like I'm not alone. I'm not the only one caring for children who are not biologically mine.
Mm-hmm. Paige, I'm going to try you one more time. Is your audio a little better? Can you say hello to everyone?
Hi.
Oh, that's excellent. Okay. Paige, I'm going to repeat my question. You had said that your stepfather was in jail, but there are still sometimes you feel that his influence is still with you. What did you mean by that?
I mean that even random times, like having a family dinner, like random like times that he's been around will come up in my mind or come up in the conversation, and we'll still learn about new things that he's done. So it's kind of just like reliving it and learning about it. Just like feels like more things happening, even though it's just talking about the past. And sometimes I might see a little something that like he did that is in his biological children. And so sometimes it'll worry me a little bit and be like, I remember that. I don't want them to end up like that.
Mm-hmm. We so appreciate you being here to share your story. I know it's not easy. We were talking a little bit about the shame and the stigma. Did you feel, Paige, that you couldn't share what was going on in your family with others outside?
Yes, I kind of felt like people at school wouldn't understand and thought they might make fun of it because they make jokes about it all the time. And they all think it's funny, but to me, it's kind of a little hurting. And so I thought that if I shared that information with them, they probably wouldn't be the supportive friend type.
Mm-hmm. And at camp, you were able to find those supportive friends?
Yes, I was able to trust all of them because they were all going through the same thing. And so it was a big trust bond and unity.
Mm-hmm. Claudia, when you were helping to design Camp Mariposa back in 2007, not a lot of people were familiar with the opioid epidemic. What made you start the program? What did you want to achieve?
Well, I think when we first started it, for me, there were so few resources for children in our country. And when Karen Moyer first approached me, she said, we have the resources, we have an infrastructure, and a lot of people want to help, but they don't know where to go with it. And Karen said, would you help me, figure out a structure for what we can do. So it was very exciting. With the opiate epidemic, we have such more blatant trauma and deprivation for kids. And I think that one of the most exciting things about Camp Mariposa is we have a lot of trauma-informed play, I call that, in that we have so many kids who are emotionally reactive, and at school, they just are going to get in trouble with that. Their peers aren't going to like them, the teachers are frustrated with them, the counselors don't know what to do. And at Camp Mariposa, they have a lot of, they're actually almost like play techniques that help calm a child down as they start to get emotionally out of control. Because when kids get scared, it taps them quickly and suddenly they're screaming, they're shouting, they're swearing, they're maybe hitting. And so I think what was so exciting about Camp Mariposa is we could meet the child where they really were without being treatment. And in that context, give people like Paige and Crystal's kids the opportunity to not feel alone and to know that they're not alone, that they're really not alone, and that they can have friends too, and that in that process, they are liked and that they come to understand their worth. These are kids who feel that they're inadequate, that they're bad, that they're damaged. And in this camp, they come to know that they're special, they have worth. So again, 2007, the idea that we could have 18 camps across this country, particularly for kids who seldom have resources available. And I don't know if people heard, but when Mary first made the introduction, this is a camp that is at no cost for the families or the children. It is a free camp. And I think that we just assume that people are always paying for things. Fortunately, they're getting support through donations and other grants and such.
One of the things, though, Claudia, we have a lot of need compared to the spots at camp, I would guess, just because the opioid epidemic and the lives of children it's touched is like astronomical. And I know a lot of focus on the camp I went to was how to teach children coping mechanisms so that when they go back to their lives, they have those skills. What are some of the skills you would encourage adults who come in contact with these children to help them with? Or how best would you support these children?
I think that from a skill perspective, we need to teach these children basic self-care. And that self-care is oftentimes how to remove themselves from the immediate sense of danger, etc. We need to teach them how to see when it comes to problems, there's an ideal answer and there's the worst answer, and that's all they see. We need to help them recognize options that could be available to them. We need to help them learn how to appropriately express feelings. And at Camp Mariposa, we do that with crafts. We do that with letter writing. We will encourage journaling. We will encourage calming techniques where they take a walk, they learn how to deep breathe. So when it comes to skills, it has a lot to do with how to calm, a lot of problem solving, a lot of the appropriate expression of feelings, and also a lot of discriminating where it's safe and where it's not safe for me to share what it is that's going on. Because we want to break the don't trust rule, but the truth is not everybody's trustworthy. So we also need to help them discriminate.
Paige,
I think the most important thing
go ahead, sorry,
is we need to teach them it's okay to ask for help, but they're only going to do that when they trust there's supportive people out there. And that's part of what they learn is they're making connections, people can be available, and we will help them with that discrimination as who's available.
Mm-hmm. Paige, you went back to be a junior counselor, even though you had aged out of the camp. Why was that so important to you?
For me, it was really important to be able to help the younger campers the way that I was helped, and so that they wouldn't really have to experience many of the stuff that I had to go through. And I think that it's really helpful that they can have this opportunity. So I think that as much help as they can get is what's needed.
What do some of the children talk to you about, or what do they come to you with?
Well, sometimes they'll come to one of the junior CITs with more stuff than they'll go to for the counselors, because it's more in their age group, and so they're more friendly, and so they'll feel more comfortable talking to them with the counselor. So sometimes they'll come to you with like, hey, this person did this, or they'll come to you with like when they're breaking down and they need somebody to talk to.
Right. And I know that every camper I spoke to found the letters to addiction so therapeutic. Tell me why it was important for you to write that.
It was important to me because I felt like I was just getting rid of it, and getting it out, like reading it out loud, made me feel like I wasn't holding it inside anymore. And it almost made me feel like I wasn't going to feel it anymore, like I had moved on. And watching it burn in the fire was really relieving, and it was enjoying to watch all of the feelings that made me feel sad just go away.
Mm-hmm. Crystal, did your kids talk to you about letters of addiction? Letters to addiction? Are you familiar with it?
Yes, I am, and they also very much enjoy that, releasing that. How Paige had said, just being able to write it down and watch it burn, they really enjoy that part of camp.
Mm-hmm. Claudia, what is it meant to, it's very dramatic to see because they throw it in the fire and there are a lot of emotions. What is the underlying kind of principle with that?
Well, let me sort of describe what a letter might sound like for a second too. So oftentimes, and again, these are 9, 10, 12-year-old children, and they'll write, "Dear Addiction," and it usually starts off really strong. "I hate you. Go away. You destroyed. I want nothing to do with you. I want my mother back," etc. And so the underlying premise is, one, it helps them to purge some anger. The other is it helps them to separate the addiction from the person, because we certainly want them to understand that their parent isn't a bad person, that something has happened to them at this point. At one point in their life, they made a choice to use, but they didn't ask for the addiction. So I think those are the two big ones, that they're separating the addiction from the person, and it gives them a chance to own their anger. And then oftentimes what that sets them up for is to just really owning the sadness. But there's so much power in writing it and then throwing it into that fire. And they find it exhilarating. Yeah. And they've done it with a group.
Mm-hmm. We have a question from the audience. How would family, friends, teachers learn about camp if they know someone who might benefit from participating? Claudia, do you?
They can go to the website, Eluna Foundation, or maybe Eluna Network, foundation.org. And then you're going to see 2 camps. One is Camp Aaron, and that is for children who've lost somebody through death. And that's usually a one-time only 5-day experience. And then there's Camp Mariposa, which is typically 4 to 6 times a year. And that's specifically for kids who've had somebody with substance abuse in their family, more specifically parents. And oftentimes we'll find those kids have lost somebody through death. And again, I want to say the alunanetwork.org or lunafoundation.org. Mm-hmm. And they'll tell you about which states they're in, which states they're going to be going into. I do also want to say, during COVID, I am so proud of the staff at the Eluna Foundation. And I specifically work with those at Mariposa. But they've kept camp going. And it's virtual. And they've done a wonderful job. I mean, it's amazing to me how creative people are. So they've not lost contact with those kids.
Mm-hmm. And also, the Eluna network doesn't just have information about camp, it has a lot of resources and help. They have someone who's there, you can type in your question, and they have someone full-time who helps with that. So please go ahead and use those resources. This is another question. How much oh, Claudia, you're going to love to answer this. How much does it cost to send one child to Camp Mariposa for 1 year? So I guess I misunderstood the question. The answer is for the parent or for the family, nothing. But do you know how much it costs on the campsite, Claudia?
I don't know. I mean, I know I have it in my paperwork. I know they certainly take donations to help you get a young person. And I know that they'll happily share that information with you if you want to make that donation, because they're often looking for just that. You know, I'd like to support one kid for 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, I don't know that.
I am looking at questions for the audience. I'm going to ask Crystal, Paige, and Claudia another question. What is one thing you would like adults to know about living with addiction, living with someone who has an addiction?
I'll go first.
Go for it.
Adults in general, I would say, like, when a kid's at school, not only for myself, but my children as well, because I grew up with addiction, is that most of the time if a kid's acting out, there's a deeper reason. Kids aren't naturally bad, you know, like if they're having disruptions in class, or they're, you know, sleepy in class, instead of, you know, a normal adult response is to get mad or to punish that child. And I think the better thing is to take that child aside and let them know, you know, that what they're doing isn't right, and ask them, you know, what's going on, and try to connect with that child and let them know that they're in a safe environment.
Because they already think they are responsible for what's going on at home. You don't want them getting into trouble or feeling like everyone sees them like troublemakers in school.
Well, yes, and definitely. And if you're feeling scared at home, getting in trouble at school is the last thing you ever wanted to do. At least when I was a kid, I was very scared to ever get in any kind of trouble at school.
Paige, what would you like to say to audience members who are listening?
I think that growing up with an addicted family member really makes you feel like kind of like it's your fault. And like, even though it isn't, you still feel like it is, and you might blame yourself for that situation and for other situations that you have nothing to do with. And it makes you critique yourself a lot and make yourself feel down, because you feel like, why couldn't I just be this way like this other kid?
And Claudia, what would you like audience members to know about living with addiction?
I would like them to know we can't always change the family dynamic, but we all have the potential to change how a child experiences themselves.
We've got another question. What kinds of behaviors are typical from children who live with individuals with addictions? What kinds of, I think you answered the skills you would encourage volunteers to get trained in to help.
I'm sorry, there's two questions there, I thought, but
what are the behaviors?
We see a wide variance. So one is you get kids who the safest thing for them to do is to disappear into the woodwork. And so what we need to do is, usually on an individual basis, what can we do to draw them out, to give them some visibility? How can we give them the attention? And it usually needs to be one-on-one, because they're scared. And they've learned the best thing for them to do is to be invisible. When we have that real responsible child in an addictive family system, our job is to engage with them in a way that they're not having to parent somebody else. And the same with the caretaker, to engage with them in a way they're not caretaking somebody else. one of the best things that we can do is give them a play environment and just allow them to be children without having to be in charge, take care of somebody else. And with our really angry kids, we need to look beyond that overt behavior and really ask, what's happened to this child? And to really appeal to the fact that they're running more from a place of fear than a place of anger. And that helps us not to be so reactive to them.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me of something Miss Wendy said, and she runs the camp in Dayton, Ohio. She said, I always look through the lens, not what's wrong with you, but what happened to you. And I think that's so, so important. Well, we're going to start wrapping up. Thank you all so much for being here. We really appreciate it. My takeaway from camp experience is that all of us have the power to do something. Camp Mariposa's campers sing a song, and I've been humming it a lot during COVID. And Claudia, you referred to it earlier, but it's just so lovely. You didn't cause it, you can't control it, you can't cure it, but you can take care of yourself by communicating your feelings, making good choices, and celebrating yourself. No one should have to face this disease alone. We can break the cycle of addiction. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Kavitha. You just have the loveliest voice. I could listen to you forever. and thank you so much, Claudia, Crystal, Paige, and Kia, for bravely and honestly sharing your stories and your insight and advice with everybody. I think, we've heard today, now more than ever, children impacted by a family member's substance use disorder need and deserve our care and support. The disease of addiction and the stigma that go along with it have not gone away during this pandemic, right? In fact, we've heard from Kavitha, it's gotten worse. So if there is anything you can do to support, I do ask you to please consider going to alunanetwork.org or our Facebook page and making a donation to support our Camp Mariposa programming so we can continue to offer services to children and families impacted by substance use disorder. So thank you all again for taking the time to join us today, and we apologize again for the Facebook Live issues. So I just ask that you keep families impacted in your thoughts today and help us continue the conversation by using the hashtag #AskAluna throughout our social media channels. I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and please, if you can, join us on November 12th, Thursday, while we have our next community conversation, Let's Get Real About Grief. And thank you so much to Shako Liu, our producer, and to our wonderful Camp Mariposa partners, Jewish Family and Children's Services in Sarasota, Compass Health in Everett, and YEP in New Orleans. Take care and have a great day.